Just a little nuts.
Normally, Max, come on.
All right, guys, we'll go ahead and try to get started. If everyone would mind muting their audio now, if you'd like to turn off your cell phone port of the, don't turn off your cell phone, just mute your audio. Okay, and let's talk about chapter 1. I took a lot from this chapter. I have a lot of notes. Talked about having the dad be a manic depressive, and that would be something that kind of shaped him. He could hear how his dad came into the house. He worked very early on in his life as he was a teenager. Made pizzas in college and made okay grades. So you can tell he's a hard worker that was trying hard for his school. He started at the studio as a supervisor, which is pretty low on the totem pole apparently. It sounds high to me, but there you go. He had menial labor jobs and really had to work his way up from the very bottom to the top. So that's really cool. Worked for Roone Arledge. That's a big part of this chapter. His main thing was innovate or die, which is similar to some of the things we talk about at Disney as well. Not the die part, but the innovate part for sure. One of the biggest things I took from this chapter was the fair and equal treatment, fair, equal, and non-abusive treatment, talking about the part where the producer talked about pulling out the genitalia and insulting Iger. Things like that, of course, wouldn't happen today in Disney because we have all fought for a fair and equal and non-abusive treatment of our employees. It's a very important part of our job, an important part of our company, and it makes me very happy after hearing that story about that. Talked about owning up to your mistakes and being fair and decent to people. My favorite quote or passage: I do know that so many of the traits that served me well in my career started with him, talking about his dad. Resonates with me because my dad and was a big part of my life, and he's passed on now, but a lot of what I am is because of my dad and who he was. Talking about some of the parallels I see with this chapter in my own leadership journey. Talked about creating space for myself just to think and be creative. It's an important part of all of our jobs. We have a lot of stress in our lives. We have a lot of responsibilities that we have to own up to, but we have to always take that time to find that creative space, that time for ourselves. That made a lot of sense to me, especially right now. Even because we're working at home, it can be a little easier to work harder and longer hours than we even end up thinking we should. But those are some of the things we talked about. One thing before we get onto it is I'm going to start with Jessica because she's going to start with a sign language of the week. So Jessica, go ahead and unmute, and I'll mute and we'll go with you.
All right, I didn't realize I was starting with it. Okay. What you may see is if people are asking for the restroom, there's actually 2 different signs that people use, which is super fun. I don't know why they have 2 signs, but they do. You kind of make a T for toilet. So you put your thumb in between your pointer finger, and then I forget which one this is called. You make a T, and then you kind of shake it, and that's toilet. Or I believe maybe it's more kind of British Sign Language, but we also use it. You do an R for restroom, and you put it parallel to the ground, and you bounce it twice. So restroom. So that's kind of the 2 ways someone might ask where the restroom is. And if you're trying to show them, you can show them on the map or just kind of like point in the direction that it is. But it's restroom or with a T, toilet. Yeah. Yay. And then do you want me to jump in, Patrick? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and start with your talking about the book as well.
Okay, cool. So for me, I really liked when they were talking about the Japanese, I can't say the word, the shokunin, which means the endless pursuit of perfection for some greater good. I really kind of liked that concept. I know myself, I can be kind of a perfectionist, so I kind of liked that whole chapter about talking about working towards it, but also giving yourself the ability to not be perfect and to improve, which is kind of what you were talking about, Patrick, finding that space each day to kind of let your mind wander, to kind of bring that creativeness back and to give yourself a break from work, and really kind of wrap yourself around having that quiet space. And then there's one other thing that I really like. Well, the idea of being honest and owning your mistakes. So I really like this quote. In your work, in your life, you'll be more respected and trusted by the people around you if you honestly own up to your mistakes. It's impossible not to make them. but it is possible to acknowledge them, learn from them, and set an example that it's okay to get things wrong sometimes. I really felt like that tied into the perfectionism too, is to kind of own up to your mistakes. And when everyone was shocked that he admitted that it was his mistake, and then later on Rune really respected him for that, I thought that was really impactful. And being able to own up and being like, look, I made a mistake, let's move on from it and learn from it. I really liked those concepts from the book.
Yeah, no, those are very good. Let's go ahead and Keilani, you haven't actually had a chance to read the first chapter, right?
No, I haven't actually read it.
No, that's okay. We'll just have you just listen in this week, and then you can join in with us next week. Vanessa Altor.
So my biggest lesson was, again, like Jesse said, just the fact that as long as you're owning your mistakes, you're going to get a lot more respect from both your superiors and those who work for you. My favorite quote, or rather passage, actually quote, was the innovate or die thing. It's something that, I mean, we talk about now on our team, but I feel like it was, don't hate me for this, but it was something that was really, like, I felt like it was forced on me with Mike Lujan because he was always looking for the next big thing. And it was something that I was super uncomfortable with back then, but I've learned to embrace it since. And then some parallels that I saw were the fact that Bob, and again, it kind of touches what Patrick said, but the fact that Bob took his experiences with his dad, like I've had terrible experiences with my dad, and I feel like it has shaped the person that I am now, for the better, I think, at least I hope. But it just goes to show that you can take both negative and positives away from bad relationships.
Thank you so much for that. That's absolutely true. Jenna, I know you're in Hawaii there and it's kind of windy, but if you want to jump in.
Sorry, I didn't figure out how to unmute it. I wrote down a few things, and I'm sorry if it's the wrong chapter. I downloaded the Audible one because I've been listening each time I walked, so it's kind of hard for me to know what chapter is what. But I did write down the relentless pursuit of perfection, but the quote I put underneath it is that if you don't choose the adventurous path, then you're not really living. I really loved that concept of when he was talking about knowing what job he should take, and he felt like he was taking the safer path and not knowing if he should stay there or not. And the choosing the adventurous path, I think, has always been something that I've always tried to strive for, moving to California and going about my own way, living in Hawaii. That is something I really enjoyed from the book, but there's a few different quotes that I put down. And I missed last week. The other one I really liked was the indecision is corrosive to morale. That one I thought was a very good quote too, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen in myself that when I'm looking for an answer and someone can't give me an answer, that I think we know indecision is ineffective as a leader, but I've never really thought about it as it being damaging to morale itself. So I really like that concept of everyone together, that you're actually hurting everyone as a whole and creating a culture of fear simply because someone didn't make a decision. So that's what I got.
Wow, no, yeah, I remember that quote now, but just having you point it out, that's absolutely true. Teresa, we're going to go to you next.
Sorry, y'all, trying to find the mute button on the phone. So the section I wanted to actually kind of ask questions of you guys. On page 5, it says, my parents were worriers. There was a sense with both of them that something bad would be soon coming down the pike. I don't know how much of it was a fluke of genetics and how much is a learned reaction to their anxiety, but I've always been the opposite of that. With few exceptions in my life, I've never worried too much about the future, and I've never had too much fear about trying something and failing. And that struck me as I reread this chapter, because Jesse and I have kind of been having a conversation about social media and the effects that it has on folks these days. I personally am not on social media. I had a weird experience with the annual pass holder, which kind of encouraged me to stay off of it. But I've been listening to folks who kind of grew up with social media and have come to understand that when folks post like pictures of themselves and what's happening in their lives, a lot of times they're posting things that are not true. And this isn't true of everybody, but some folks are posting things that, you know, they're trying to create like this the best life possible, and it isn't actually reality. Like they'll post pictures kind of like Jenna, like in Hawaii, but she's not really in Hawaii. And things of that nature. You know, they're posting like, I did this today, and maybe they really didn't, or they took a picture of themselves against some beautifully painted mural, which just happens to be a mural somewhere in LA, but they're talking about, you know, oh, this is in some important historical landmark in, you know, some other country. And it surprised me that people would constantly be trying to create a facade about their life in order to impress other people. And when Bob talked about being afraid to try things, it made me wonder if folks who are constantly trying to create their alternate reality on social media, if it's because they don't want to try things and fail. So is it now like looked bad upon if you try something and fail and you're not being like the best absolute you that you can be? Do you know what I'm saying? It seems weird. It seems, you know, like now, like everybody's a winner. When I grew up, you weren't a winner, but that was okay because you were trying and learning. And I wonder if we're putting too much pressure on each other these days to constantly be something that we're striving to be, but, you know, but it's okay to get there. Like the journey is just as important as getting there. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I crazy for thinking this?
Not at all. No. What I was thinking when you were saying that is we don't really post when we fail. You know, you really only post about when you win. So I think that we only see other people winning, so we assume other people are only winning. So we're so afraid to try and fail because we don't see anyone else failing around us. I think that's what I'm taking from what you're trying to say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that either.
I think what I take from what you're trying to say is, and you know, I have 4 kids, all in the same age bracket, is that people post stuff on social media to try it out, to see how it works out for them before they're willing to jump off and do it. So everybody puts stuff out there, and if somebody doesn't like it, they take it down and they see how many likes and dislikes. I'm not on social media either, but I do think it's sometimes can harm your self-esteem a little bit if you don't get the answers you want, rather than just take it and come across with the attitude that I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, I'm going to try something else. That's my take.
One thing that I've mentioned with you, Teresa, is I think a lot of it is the competitive nature of schooling. I came from a high school that was very competitive and focused on academics. And I know there's a lot of that in California, especially California. All of our colleges are very competitive to get into, even sometimes community college. So I feel like that always having to get more and more laurels and prove that you're better than the next candidate, and having so many extracurriculars that people are just trying all the time to be perfect and just trying to get those accommodations that they can put it on their resume or put it on their applications for college. And so I think that's kind of that nature of being afraid to try and fail, because you can't afford that. You don't have the time in order to fail and move on. Or if it's not going to look good, why are you going to try it, sort of thing. That's kind of where my brain goes when we're talking about that.
Pretty valid.
I think a lot of it also has to do with who your leader or who your teacher is. Coming through the ranks in multiple companies and multiple businesses that I've worked for, we are put in positions before social, and even I think it's even worse now. As Teresa said, there's so much focus put on filters and Instagram and I'm living the perfect life, don't you want to be me? But they're not happy inside. And part of our role as leaders is to be that mentor, to be that counselor. I mean, we do a lot of that. And I was trying to find her name. Her name's Christina Kuzmic. She is a speaker about the fallacy of people putting so much emphasis on being perfect as a parent, as a family member, as a coworker. And you guys have all heard me say this in the fact that none of us are perfect. I don't expect anybody to be perfect, but I think it's a pressure we put on ourselves, to Jessica's point, because of our school that we go to. What sporting program am I in? And you have to be really comfortable with who you're around to want to put yourself out there on that limb. I think we've all worked for those leaders that expect perfection. So you're silent and sitting in the corner, nodding your head rather than putting an opinion out there. And I think in Bob's book, he does talk about, and I really appreciated that part of, you got to put yourself out there. You got to keep plugging away. And the way he was treated and what he took away from those jobs that he worked at that were not the greatest, and he wasn't treated the best. And he kept that in the back of his head of, okay, that's not the leader I want to be. That's not the person I want to be. So taking it, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You know, I think Teresa's spot on in that in today's social media. Again, some of you have heard me say it, you know, that 2-second soundbite, that everybody follows a 2-second soundbite instead of finding out the real facts or the real information and the story behind that 2-second soundbite. So that's our challenge as leaders of CAST and as leaders and peers, to help us get all that information.
Mary, you wanted to say something?
I kind of wanted to offer a counterpoint, if I could, because I know the negative side of communication, but in this book, Bob's talking about respect, and he's talking about relationships. And in the prologue, did you do the prologue last week, I'll bet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the prologue was amazing.
Yeah.
But it's all about stress reaction to bad stuff, and having people around you that you could turn to say, hey, I need help. I need someone to help get that for me. Could you make this call for me? I mean, from a duty manager point of view, that's kind of what our role is, right? And it's the relationships that you form that get you through that, and a lot of self-discipline, and the ability to take a breath, and the ability to not focus on everything all at the same time. So when you're talking about social media, I'm going to tell you that right this second, I only dabble, but I have an Instagram and a Twitter that right now, I hope nobody's house is on fire right now.
Oh, sorry, that's my
San Francisco, okay?
It could happen. It could happen here in San Francisco. Yeah. Right now on Instagram, you guys, the cast members of the Walt Disney Company are rallying together internationally and being proud of this company. And they're posting a picture of themselves at work and being proud of it. And what I'm feeling in Instagram right now is expressions of support and love. And I've reached out to people that never in a million years would connect with me on social media, because, you know, why would they think I'd be on social media? And we've had great conversations of support and exchange of information and ideas. And I think, like in everything, you choose how you make that environment for you, and you don't let it be unhealthy for you, and you take control of that and don't be a victim of that. That's true in person. Why wouldn't it be true in social media?
I love
That's a really good point, Mary. Thanks, you guys. It helps me understand human nature more when I can ask everybody's opinions. So thank you.
Teresa, I would follow you on social media if you wanted to.
Okay. I follow Rebecca and I follow Josh, so maybe I'll set something up.
I think what's interesting about everybody's points, if you don't mind me jumping in, in the book, it very much focuses on the pursuit. That is the pursuit of it reminds me of the movie A Pursuit of Happiness, but it's the pursuit of perfection. It's the pursuit and the journey of it, like Teresa was saying. And I think social media, just like everything, obviously is a tool. And if you use it right, but the thing social media is missing is the pursuit. It's usually you see the finale of it. Like I finished the race, so I post a picture of me winning the race, or me getting a medal at the end of the race, but you're not seeing any of the journey. So there's parts of it that is fantastic because really great for them for completing a marathon or whatever it was, but we don't see any of that pursuit. And I think that's the thing that I think we consistently see is missing, is that so much of life is that pursuit and we don't see it.
I think it is a good point. I think what my takeaway is our business at Disneyland is completely different than it used to be. You brought up the abuse in the beginning, Patrick, but the resort has changed. It didn't start out as a resort to begin with, and it's changed over the years that I've been there. But I think to Jenna's point, to everybody's point, in the pursuit, it's all of our obligations to help each other and to be there for each other and not worry about, I think everybody's worried about is someone in my space or taking my space or gonna walk over the top of me, rather than be supportive and help them with the knowledge. You mentioned that earlier, Jenna, about you don't always get the answers you're looking for. And it's true when you're asking questions of people and they just look at you, then you have to go to someone else, and you do have to find that support around you. You have to find the people who are going to be helpful to you and get you the tools that you need to succeed in whatever it is you want to pursue. I think that's the part that it's going to be the most helpful to all of us. And that's kind of what my takeaway was, is to walk over the noise and keep moving forward and find everything that you're looking for.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. Emily, what did you have for the prompts for the book this week?
So I'll start off with the biggest lesson that I took from this chapter was that everyone starts somewhere. You know, Bob Iger didn't start off with the company as CEO. He started in a smaller position and he learned a lot, and he was willing to take these little small jobs. You know, he was doing all these different odd jobs. I think he got not cream cheese. I don't know if I'm thinking of cream cheese. For Sinatra, he got him like a random nothing, you know, but like that's part of cream cheese because I'm eating a bagel. Anyway, like he was just willing to take these little jobs and learn as much as he could. And when he did that Sinatra special, he was just observing everything. It wasn't really in his current situation at the time, but he was just really excited to observe as much as he could. My favorite quote was the "Innovate or Die" quote. I had that bookmarked and highlighted and circled and everything. There's no innovation if you operate out of fear of the new or untested. So it's always good to you know, embrace anything new. And then the parallel, which I was kind of talking about in my first prompt, what the biggest lesson is, learn everything. You know, it's my parallel now is I'm trying to observe as much as I can, trying to learn everything in the company. You know, when I worked like special events, when I would do GSO, I was always so excited to see like how everything works in its different capacities, different events, and seeing how the whole company operates, because, you know, it's nice to see what other people are doing, because I know my day-to-day, I know how retail works, but talking to someone in attractions, you learn things that you had no idea went on during, you know, a normal day in the resort. So that's kind of the parallel that I got from seeing Bob doing all those different positions in the beginning of his time with the company.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mary, what did you take away from the first chapter?
I was double checking to make sure there wasn't a different Mary.
No,
so no, good. You know, in the first chapter, you guys have talked about many of the things that are striking, and for me personally, I knew he got up crazy early in the morning. I've worked with somebody who worked close with him, and getting up crazy early in the morning, but is not part of what I want to do. I often am just getting home then, but it is true that I think that's enormously valuable, especially if you are a leader, that you find quiet time because you are available so much of the time to the people around you. You feel that for your cast leaning in your doorway all the time. You know, you had a lot of interruptions and a lot of time you have to spend on somebody else's issue that wasn't your plan in the course of the day. You guys have all felt that. And it is important to build into your routine a way to be in your own head and figure out what your own goals are and figure out what your plan for the day is, and whatever time of day that you need to call you time, that has to happen. For me, honestly, that tends to be 2 a.m. But if it's early morning, good for you. And the point is to clear your head of all the other things that sort of put a barrier between you and your focus, or you're never going to innovate or die. You'll just sort of drown in all the day-to-day. And that's a pretty good takeaway from Bob's style in general.
Absolutely. Vanessa Dominguez.
Hi. I liked in this book when I feel like throughout the chapter, he was talking about the different jobs he had, and just noticing that he did his best and he did strive for perfection and everything like that, but he was doing, you know, what he thought was right, and he was confident in his decisions. And even in that meeting when he, you know, admitted to making an error, he was still like, not everyone else would have done that in that group. And I think that was nice to see, that he admitted to his mistakes and just, he got something, you know, the guy, what was his name? I forgot.
Was it Rune Artley?
Yes, thank you. I was trying to find his person. Yeah, he respected him after that. And that was actually when he was talking about Rune always looking for perfection and trying to, like he would scrap something, even if it was completed, just scrap it because he knew that they could do better. And I appreciated that, but I also like that that Iger had mentioned, you know, what was it? It's a delicate thing, finding the balance between demanding that your people perform and not instilling the fear of failure in them. And I think that he saw that in that meeting, that he did, you know, they all wanted to please him. And I think that fear, no one else wanted to prove or, you know, mention that they had made a mistake. And I think that was a big lesson, at least for me. Sorry, I'm losing my headphones.
No, you're okay. Thank you so much for that. Haley Thomas, I have you next.
Let's unmute myself first. That'd be great. I think the biggest takeaway that I had was first him starting at the bottom and taking all those jobs, because in a way I can relate my time in parking, you know, not the most glamorous job, but I learned a lot from that I got to take away when I left and came to retail. And quote of being decent to people and treating everyone with fairness and empathy. I try to lead with that. You know, I like to think I can be a very empathetic person when it comes to my cast, and I try to relate to them and kind of help them find their way as well. Yeah. It's a lot of like, I agree with everyone else and what they're thinking this chapter. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Ted, what was your takeaway from chapter 1? We can't hear you, Ted. Are you muted on one of your devices? It's gone now. Maybe we should come back to Ted. Let's see. There he is.
No.
Nope, cannot hear you.
He has 2 devices going. You'd think he could figure it out.
Natalie, do you want to try to jump in and we'll come back to Ted?
Natalie?
Natalie.
Calling Natalie.
Or not. Maybe we're having technical difficulties.
You guys, I got to jump off. Thank you for letting me play. You guys are cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your comments.
Yeah.
I just want to, while we try to figure out the other two, I'll just give you one thing that kind of struck me a lot was the word of caring that gets handed down, and the idea that words are very powerful. Rune, you know, the way he talks to people isn't always great. And I want to just let you guys know that as a leader, one of the most important things we can do is choose our words very carefully. Things get said that it can either inspire for the rest of the life, or they can tear people down for the rest of their life. I was watching a movie called Hacksaw Ridge the other day, and it struck me because the main character walks into a medical room, and he's looking around for this nurse that he's trying to romance and trying to give her some nice flowers and love her and everything. And he has no real direction in his life whatsoever, but he sees somebody in need. They have an open wound that's bleeding, so he goes over there and helps them by helping to hold the belt. That's all the doctor asks him to do. And the doctor remarks to him that, isn't that great how well you're doing with doing this? You should be a doctor. And it was something that kind of helped him to have self-confidence and shaped what he became in life. And I just want to make sure we all know that that's what all of our words can do to people. They can either shape their life and give them focus, or they can be something that tears them down. So please just make sure we, think about what we say to our people and build them up when possible. That's the most important thing we can do as leaders. Thank you guys so much. I don't know if Ted, are you able to talk yet? No. Well, Ted, I'm sure you had good things to say. You guys just want to do a little talking until we can get Ted on there.
I saw a notepad. He's got some good notes right now.
Yes, some great notes. I really want to hear him.
Yeah.
Ted, are you able to talk?
Hey, does it work?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. Oh my, okay. You guys, this I'm on chapter 7. I'm like so into it. I'm just writing notes like crazy, but I remember just reading this particular part, and I wrote it down, how humble, where he just started from. Like he keeps on saying, I didn't go to the best schools. I wasn't the best educated. My mom and dad, were exactly what Teresa said. I was trying to get in there when you made that, when you started to talk, Teresa, because that was one of the big things about how his parents always thought of something going to happen, and how he was opposite of it. And if you think about him, whenever I see him or whenever we see him or hear about him, he's so calm and so collected. But one of the big things that I really liked was how he was the person who fixed things at home, and how his mom looked to him to fix things. And even when like he would tear his pants, he had to wear them, like tough. There's no money, and we have to wear that patch on it, and it is what it is. So it was very humbling to kind of see, wow, he didn't go to the best schools. He is a normal person, and look what he's, done for himself. And how he treats others was just amazing, just to kind of hear. I know I'm going to jump into other chapters, but yeah, it was, that part was pretty, it really hit home, because his family is like everyone else's family. And we all come from different backgrounds, different moms and dads. Some of us only have a mom, some only have a dad. And trying to kind of live that way. And, some of the things that we had mentioned before, I'm going to jump to subject, was when we think about how people, when you mentioned about how people put things on Facebook and so forth, and we think about the generations about sports, how everyone gets a trophy. There's no winners. There's, and we kind of maybe helped along that, our culture here. I remember when I was growing up, listen, if you weren't first place or second or third, then it didn't matter. Then you go back and you're part of the team and you move on. But now in different generations, maybe knew that everyone got a trophy. So, I guess it depends on generation. So, but to his point, it was how he just kind of looked. He looked for a different view, and not so much for a to win, but win on his own terms. He had to make sure that he was fair, that he was direct, but at the same time, he wasn't apologetic for admitting that he was wrong. He was wrong, and he's wrong. Let's move on. So that's what I liked about this chapter.
Yeah, so good.
He also said, don't fake the knowledge, which I thought was good. Either you know it or you don't know it. Everyone will start respecting and appreciating you.